The morning looked like the kind people trust without thinking. The sky over the city was clear and soft blue, the kind of blue that feels calm just by looking at it. The sun had just risen, spreading a pale light across the buildings, the roads, and the wide open space around the airport. Everything felt clean, quiet, and predictable. It was a Saturday, and people moved through the terminal in that relaxed weekend rhythm. Some held coffee cups, still half asleep. Others pulled rolling suitcases behind them, checking their phones, reading messages, or scanning boarding passes. Families stayed close together, making sure no one wandered too far. Children stood near the windows, watching planes move slowly across the ground like giant machines in a careful dance. Nothing about the morning felt unusual. At one of the gates, people waited for boarding to begin for a flight heading west. It was just another flight among hundreds that would take off that day. The gate agent spoke in a practiced voice, calm and steady, calling groups one by one. People stood up when their turn came. Some rushed, afraid of running out of overhead space. Others stayed seated until the line thinned. It was all normal, the kind of normal no one ever remembers. Among those passengers was a woman traveling with 2 children. She stood slightly off to the side at first, not in a hurry, letting others move ahead. Her hair was tied back in a simple ponytail. Not styled, just practical. She wore a plain jacket, jeans, and sneakers that had clearly been used many times. Nothing about her stood out. If anyone noticed her at all, they saw what they expected to see: a tired mother, someone managing 2 kids alone. Nothing more. Her daughter stayed close to her side, holding onto her arm as if it was the safest place in the world. Her son stood a little ahead, already focused on a book he had opened before they even reached the gate. He barely looked up as the line moved forward. The woman kept track of everything quietly. Boarding passes, bags, where the children were, who was moving, what was happening next. She didn't rush. She didn't slow others down. She moved with a steady rhythm, like someone who had done this many times before and knew exactly how to make things work without drawing attention. When families were called to board early, she stepped forward. No hesitation, no confusion, just movement. Inside the aircraft, the air felt slightly warm and still. The narrow aisle filled quickly with people placing bags overhead, shifting seats, adjusting themselves into small spaces. She guided her children to their row without stopping. Her daughter reached the window first and claimed it immediately, pressing her face against the glass with excitement. Questions started right away, one after another, fast and curious. Why is that truck spraying water? Why are the wings shiny? Why do planes have lights? The woman answered each question without pause. Her voice stayed calm, steady, and patient. She didn't rush her answers, and she didn't ignore them. It felt like she had done this many times, not just on this day, but over years. Her son took the aisle seat and went back to his book almost instantly. He adjusted his headphones around his neck, not fully wearing them, just ready. He seemed comfortable, like flying was something normal to him, not something exciting or scary. The woman took the middle seat between them. That was not an accident. She placed her bag under the seat, kept the smaller one within reach, and started organizing things before the plane even pushed back. Snacks, water, napkins. Everything had its place. Everything had a purpose. She handed her daughter a small bag of crackers before being asked. She checked if her son had what he needed without interrupting him. She made sure both seat belts were fastened properly, not in a strict way, just quietly making sure it was done. A flight attendant passed by and helped lift one of her bags into the overhead bin. She thanked him with a small nod and a simple smile. No extra conversation, no explanation, just acknowledgement. From the outside, it was an ordinary moment, a small act of help for a parent traveling alone. That was all anyone saw. What they didn't see was everything she didn't say. For years, she had lived a completely different life. A life where the sky was not something to look at, but something to work in. A life where aircraft were not transportation, but responsibility. A life where every decision could carry real weight. But none of that showed now. Not in her clothes, not in her posture, not in the way she spoke. She had learned to leave that part of herself quiet. Not gone, just quiet. The plane doors closed, and the cabin settled into a soft hum. Safety instructions played. People half listened, half ignored, like they always did. The woman watched, even though she didn't need to. Her eyes moved naturally, noticing details without effort. The crew positions, the timing, the tone of the announcements. It wasn't something she chose to do. It just happened. Some habits don't leave. The aircraft began to move slowly away from the gate. Her daughter leaned closer to the window, watching everything with wide eyes. Her son turned a page in his book, steady and focused. The woman sat still for a moment. Then she looked out the window, not just looking, reading. The sky, the light, the movement of clouds. It was subtle, but it was there. A connection most people don't have. The plane turned onto the runway and paused briefly. Engines grew louder. There was a slight pushback into the seat as speed increased. Her daughter grabbed her arm, reacting to the feeling. The woman placed her hand gently over hers, steadying her without saying anything at first. Then she spoke softly. "It's okay." Her voice carried no doubt, no hesitation, just certainty. The aircraft lifted into the air smoothly. The ground pulled away, shrinking into patterns of roads and buildings. Inside the cabin, everything relaxed again. Seatbelt signs remained on, but people settled into their own worlds. Phones, books, sleep, conversations. The woman managed both children through the climb without effort. She handed gum to her daughter before being asked. Already knowing her ears would hurt, she checked her son's headphones, making sure they were actually connected. Small things, but done with precision. Once the plane reached cruising altitude, the noise softened into a steady background hum. The woman finally allowed herself a moment to sit back. Her daughter continued asking questions, now about the clouds outside. Her son stayed deep in his book, completely absorbed. The woman answered when needed, but her attention shifted outward again. She looked at the sky, not casually, carefully. The color, the light, the layers of cloud below. It was quiet, but something in her expression changed slightly. Not emotion exactly, recognition, like seeing something familiar after a long time. Then, after a while, she closed her eyes, not fully asleep, just resting. Her body stayed aware even in stillness. Years of experience had built that into her, the kind of awareness that doesn't turn off easily. The flight moved forward without anything unusual. Time passed in small moments. A drink service, a child laughing a few rows ahead, someone shifting in their seat. Nothing important, nothing memorable, just a normal flight. Exactly the kind people forget as soon as it's over. And in the middle of all that normal, the woman in the middle seat remained exactly what everyone believed she was. A quiet mother, a tired traveler, someone easy to overlook. She didn't correct that assumption. She never did, because she had learned something over time. You don't always need to be seen. Sometimes, being unseen is what allows you to live the life you choose. And she had chosen this life. A smaller one, a quieter one. One built around school schedules, meals, and evenings at home, not around aircraft, not around missions, not around the sky. Or at least, that's what it looked like, because the truth was simpler. She hadn't left that life behind. Not really. She had just placed it somewhere deeper, somewhere it didn't need to be visible every day. But it was still there, waiting, not for attention, not for recognition, just there. And on that calm Saturday morning, somewhere between takeoff and landing, with her children on either side and the sky stretching endlessly outside the window, she had no reason to believe that part of her would be needed again. Everything felt normal. Everything felt safe. Everything felt like just another day. And that is exactly how it always begins. Not with noise, not with warning, but with a quiet moment where nothing seems out of place at all. The first sign that something was wrong was so small that almost no one noticed it. The aircraft had already started its descent. The seatbelt sign came on with a soft chime, and the usual announcement followed. People adjusted their seats, closed tray tables, and prepared for landing the way they always did. Some looked out the window. Some went back to their phones. Some didn't react at all. It felt routine. The woman in the middle seat helped her daughter sit up straight and fasten her seatbelt properly. She checked it with a gentle pull, making sure it was secure. Her son had already done it on his own, without being told. That small detail didn't go unnoticed by her. He was growing. She noticed that more often now. Outside the window, the ground was coming into view. The mountains stood far in the distance, bright with snow, while the city stretched wide below in straight lines and quiet neighborhoods. It was a familiar sight. Home. Her daughter pressed her face against the window again, pointing at everything she could see. Are we close? Yes, the woman said softly. How long? Just a few minutes. The answer was calm, simple, and reassuring. Inside, the aircraft continued its descent smoothly. There was no shaking, no sudden movement, nothing that would make a normal passenger feel uneasy. But the woman felt it. Not clearly at first, just a small shift, a feeling that something was slightly off. It wasn't something she could point to right away. It wasn't sound or movement. It was more like an absence of something that should have been there. She opened her eyes fully and looked out the window again. Her attention sharpened. Her body changed without her deciding to change it. This wasn't fear. It was awareness, the kind that comes from experience. The aircraft aligned with the runway. The ground rose closer, faster now. Everything still looked normal. Then the wheels touched the ground. A solid, familiar impact. The kind people expect when a plane lands. For a brief moment, everything felt exactly right. The engines roared as the aircraft began to slow down. That was normal too. But then, something didn't match. The slowing wasn't happening the way it should. It was subtle, quiet, but wrong. The woman's eyes shifted immediately. She looked forward, then out the window again. The runway was moving past them too quickly. Her mind began working before she could stop it. Speed, distance, time. The numbers started forming without effort. She sat up slightly. Her daughter didn't notice. Her son did. He looked at her, not at the window. He had learned to read her face. And something in her expression told him this moment was different. Still, he didn't speak. He just watched. The aircraft continued rolling. Too fast. The engines were loud, but the feeling of slowing down wasn't strong enough. The woman focused on the wing. From her angle, she could see just enough. Something wasn't right there either. She narrowed her eyes slightly. The left side. It wasn't behaving the same as the right. That confirmed it. Her breathing stayed steady. Her hands didn't move. But inside, everything had shifted into full attention. This wasn't a guess anymore. This was a problem. A real one. Up front, inside the cockpit, the situation was already clear. The captain had felt at the moment the wheels hit the ground. The braking system wasn't responding the way it should. He pressed harder. The pedals pushed back. But the aircraft didn't slow enough. At the same time, the aircraft pulled slightly to one side. That made things worse. He adjusted instinctively, trying to keep the plane straight. But every correction made something else harder. The first officer began calling out numbers. Her voice stayed controlled. Professional. Speed. Runway remaining. Each number mattered. Each number reduced the options. Back in the cabin, most passengers still didn't understand. Some noticed the speed. Some didn't. To them, it felt like a slightly longer landing. Unusual, maybe, but not alarming. Not yet. The woman knew better. Her eyes moved quickly now. Runway, wing, forward, back again. She didn't need instruments. She had seen this pattern before. Not exactly like this, but close enough. Her mind connected the pieces. Braking issue, uneven thrust. That combination was dangerous, very dangerous. She looked ahead again. The runway stretched out in front of them, but not far enough, not nearly far enough. Her daughter was still watching the ground, excited by the speed. Her son leaned slightly closer to her. He didn't ask anything. He just waited. He trusted her to speak when it mattered. The woman placed her hand lightly over his for a second. A small gesture. Steady, reassuring. But it meant something else too. Be ready. Up front, the numbers kept coming. For 1,000 feet remaining. Still too fast. 3,000. The captain's focus tightened. He knew what those numbers meant. He had been flying long enough to understand when something crossed from manageable to dangerous. They were getting close to that line. Very close. He tried adjusting again. More braking. Less thrust. Then more thrust. Nothing solved both problems at once. Everything was a trade-off. Slow down faster, but lose control. Keep control, but don't slow enough. Neither option worked. Back in row 21, the woman felt the same realization. There was no easy fix. This was becoming a situation with no safe margin. She looked at the end of the runway again. Still far, but not far enough. Her daughter finally turned from the window. Why are we still going so fast? The question was simple. Honest. The woman turned to her. She kept her voice soft. It's okay. Just stay seated. No panic. No urgency. Just calm direction. Her daughter nodded, trusting her completely. Her son didn't look away from her face. He saw more than her words. He saw the focus, the calculation, the shift. He had seen that look before, but never like this. Up front, the first officer called out again. 2,400 feet remaining. The number hung in the air. The captain made a decision, a difficult one he had never made before in his career. He reached for the intercom. Back in the cabin, the aircraft kept moving. Too fast, too steady. The end of the runway slowly coming closer. Still far, but not far enough. The woman felt the timing, felt the limit approaching. Her body was completely still now, but inside, she was already preparing. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew one thing clearly. If nothing changed, this would not end well. The intercom clicked, a sound everyone recognized. But what came next was something no one expected. The captain's voice filled the cabin, controlled at first, then strained. He spoke quickly, directly. There was no room for confusion. He asked for help from the passengers. For a brief second, no one reacted. It didn't make sense. That kind of announcement doesn't happen. Not on a normal flight. Not ever. People looked at each other. Some half froze, unsure. Others froze completely. Fear began to spread, not loudly, but quietly. The kind that moves through people without words. The woman didn't move right away. She didn't panic. She didn't rush. She just listened. Every word, every tone, every detail. And in that moment, everything became clear. This was not a situation being handled. This was a situation running out of time. She looked forward again, then down the aisle, then at her children. Her daughter's face showed confusion. Her son's face showed something else. Understanding. Not complete, but enough. Enough to know this mattered. The woman took one slow breath, the kind that centers everything. Around her, people were still frozen, waiting, hoping someone else would move. No one did. The aircraft continued forward. The runway continued to disappear. And the moment stretched thinner and thinner. Something had to change. And very soon, because time was no longer something they had much of. Not anymore. For a second after the announcement, the entire cabin felt frozen. Not quiet in a peaceful way. Quiet in a heavy way. The kind of silence where people stop breathing properly. The kind where everyone hears the same thing and doesn't know how to react. The captain had just asked for help from the passengers. That wasn't supposed to happen. People looked at each other, searching for someone who might stand up. A few shifted in their seats. One man near the front lifted himself halfway, then slowly sat back down when the meaning of the words settled in. No one moved. The aisle stayed empty. The aircraft kept rolling forward. The runway kept disappearing. In row 21, the woman didn't move immediately. She didn't rush to stand. She didn't react like someone trying to be a hero. She just sat there for one more second, thinking, not panicking, not guessing, calculating. Her eyes moved once more toward the window, then forward, then down. Everything she needed was already clear. There was no time for doubt, no time for discussion, only time for action. She stood up. It was simple. No sudden movement, no drama, just a quiet decision turning into motion. The small snack wrapper was still in her hand. She hadn't even noticed she was holding it. Her daughter grabbed her arm immediately. "Where are you going?" The question came fast, filled with confusion. The woman turned to her. Her face was calm, completely calm. That kind of calm doesn't come from pretending. It comes from knowing. "I'll be right back," she said gently. Her daughter tightened her grip for a second. "Why?" "To help." Just one word. Soft, clear, enough. Her daughter looked at her face again. Something in it made her stop asking questions. The fear didn't grow. It paused, because her mother didn't look afraid. Her son was already watching. He had been watching from the moment the announcement came. He didn't ask anything. He didn't try to stop her. He already understood something had changed. Not fully, but enough. The woman looked at him next. "Stay with her." He nodded once. A small, steady nod. It was all she needed. She stepped into the aisle. The aircraft was still moving fast. The ground outside blurred past the windows. Passengers turned their heads as she moved forward. Some watched in confusion, some with hope, some with fear. They didn't fully understand yet. She didn't look at any of them. Her focus was forward, only forward. Her steps were steady, balanced, careful but not hesitant. She moved like someone who had walked through unstable spaces before, like someone who understood how to keep control, even when the ground wasn't still. Near the front, the flight attendant stepped into the aisle. He raised his hand. "Ma'am, you need to sit down." His voice was firm, trained, doing exactly what was supposed to do. No one should be standing during landing, especially not now. The woman didn't stop. "I'm a transport pilot," she said. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. "I know what's happening. Let me through." The flight attendant hesitated. Just for a moment, in his years of work, he had seen all kinds of reactions. Panic, confusion, people saying things they didn't mean because they were scared. But this felt different. He looked at her face. Really looked. There was no panic there. No rush. No uncertainty. Just focus. Clear and steady. He stepped aside. Not slowly. Not reluctantly. Just enough. She moved past him without another word. Ahead, the cockpit door was already open. Inside, the situation was getting tighter by the second. Numbers continued to drop. Speed. Distance. Time. The captain was fully focused, but the problem wasn't improving. The aircraft was still moving too fast. Still not slowing the way it should. The first officer continued calling out. Her voice stayed controlled. But there was something underneath it now. Pressure. Real pressure. The woman reached the cockpit. She stepped inside. Everything happened quickly after that. There was no time for introductions. No time for long explanations. The captain glanced back. He saw her. A woman in simple clothes. Hair tied back. Nothing about her appearance suggested what she had just claimed. But time didn't allow doubt. "Experience?" he asked quickly. "Transport aircraft." 9 years, she replied. Short, direct, enough. Her eyes were already moving. Instruments, displays, controls. She didn't search. She read, like someone looking at something familiar, something known. Her mind connected everything instantly. The problem, the pattern, the failure. She had seen it before. Not here, not like this, but close enough, very close. "Left reverser is gone," she said. "Braking isn't holding properly." Her voice stayed steady, clear, focused, no extra words. The captain didn't argue, didn't question. There was no time. "What do we do?" he asked. That question carried everything in it. Trust, urgency, reality. She stepped slightly closer, keeping her balance as the aircraft continued moving. "You need full reverse on the working side," she said. "It will pull you." He nodded. "I know." "Use opposite brake to hold direction," she continued. "Don't fight it the normal way. It will feel wrong." She paused just long enough for him to hear it clearly. "Trust it." The first officer called out again. Runway remaining. The number was lower now, much lower. The captain took a breath, then acted. He pushed the control. The engine response changed immediately. The aircraft reacted. It pulled harder to one side. Stronger now. More force. Everything inside his body told him to correct the opposite way. That instinct had been built over years. But he didn't follow it. He followed her. He pressed the opposite brake. Steady, not pumping, not adjusting too much. Just holding. The aircraft fought for a second. Then it steadied, still fast, but stable. The woman watched closely. Every movement, every response. Hold it, she said. Don't change. Her voice guided the moment. Not loud, but exact. The first officer called another number. Lower again. But something had changed. The speed was dropping faster now. Still not safe, but better. Possible. The woman kept watching. Timing. Balance. Everything had to stay exactly right. Keep pressure, she said. Don't let it slip. The captain held steady. His focus narrowed completely. Nothing else existed. Not the cockpit. Not the noise. Not the fear. Just the control in his hands. The aircraft slowed. Gradually. Then more. The runway kept coming. But now the numbers began to shift in a different direction. Still tight. Still close. But no longer impossible. Hold it, she repeated. No change. No hesitation. The first officer's voice came again. Another number. Then another. Each one better than the last. The speed dropped. The tension remained. Until finally, the aircraft came to a stop. Everything went still. The engines quieted. The motion ended. For a moment, no one spoke. Not in the cockpit. Not in the cabin. Just silence. The kind that comes after something almost happens. The captain let out a slow breath. His hands were still on the controls. Slightly shaking now. The first officer leaned back slightly. Her voice didn't need to call numbers anymore. The woman looked forward through the window. At the runway. At how close it had been. She didn't say anything about it. She didn't need to. She already knew. Then she stepped back. I need to go back, she said. Simple. Direct. The captain looked at her. There were a lot of things he could have said, but none of them fit in that moment. So he just nodded. She turned and walked out of the cockpit, back into the aisle, back through the same path she had taken. Passengers watched her again. But this time, something had changed. They didn't fully understand. Not yet, but they felt it. She reached her row, sat down. Her daughter wrapped her arms around her immediately. Her son looked at her face, searching, understanding. Is it okay? He asked. She placed a hand on his shoulder. Yes, she said. And this time, it was true. For a few seconds after the aircraft stopped, no one moved. Not because they were told to stay still, but because their bodies hadn't caught up to what had just happened. The engines were quieter now. The loud roar for moments before it faded into a low hum. The sudden stillness felt strange, almost unreal, like the world had paused without warning. People looked around slowly. Some stared out the windows. Some looked at each other. Some just sat there, hands still gripping their armrests. They knew something had gone wrong. They just didn't know how close it had been. In row 21. The woman sat back in her seat like nothing unusual had happened. Her daughter was still holding on to her tightly, arms wrapped around her neck, face pressed into her shoulder. The kind of hug that comes from instinct, not understanding. The woman held her gently, one hand on her back, steady and calm. It's okay, she said softly. Her daughter nodded against her shoulder, not letting go. Her son sat beside her, watching her face closely. He didn't look scared. Not now. He had been watching her the entire time she was gone, watching how she walked, watching how she came back. He had seen enough to know something important had happened. Did you help them? He asked quietly. She looked at him. There was a small pause, not because she didn't know the answer, but because she was choosing how to say it. They fixed it, she said. I just helped a little. Her son kept looking at her. He didn't argue. He didn't push. But something in his eyes said he understood more than she had said. After a second, he gave a small nod, that same calm, steady nod, the one she had seen before, the one that reminded her of someone she missed every single day. She looked away for a moment, just one moment, then back at him. It's okay now, she added. He nodded again. That was enough. Outside, emergency vehicles began to appear. Flashing lights, moving quickly across the runway. Fire trucks, airport safety units. They surrounded the aircraft at a careful distance, positioning themselves the way they were trained to do. Passengers noticed them immediately. Whispers started. What's happening? Why are they here? Was something wrong? Questions moved from one row to another, passed quietly, growing slightly each time they were repeated. But there were no clear answers yet. Only pieces, small observations, bits of what people had seen. Someone had heard the announcement. Someone had seen a woman walk forward. Someone had noticed how fast the plane was going. Each person had a part, but no one had the full story. Not yet. The woman in row 21 didn't join any of the conversations. She stayed where she was. Her daughter slowly relaxed in her arms, though she didn't let go completely. Her son leaned back in his seat, still watching everything, still thinking. The cabin crew began moving again. Their voices returned, calm and controlled. They explained that the aircraft had stopped safely and asked everyone to remain seated. Their tone was steady, professional, but softer than usual, more careful, because they knew what had almost happened, even if the passengers didn't. Minutes passed, slowly, each one feeling longer than it actually was. People checked their phones, though there was no signal yet. Some sent messages anyway, hoping they would go through later. Some just sat quietly, holding on to the moment in their own way. Near the front, the flight attendant who had stepped aside earlier stood still for a moment. He replayed that moment in his mind. The woman walking toward him, the way she spoke, the way she looked at him. He had made a decision in seconds, and now he understood what that decision had meant. He looked down the aisle, toward row 21. He could see her sitting there, just like before. Nothing about her stood out. If someone had boarded the plane now, they would never guess. That thought stayed with him. The doors of the aircraft remained closed while ground teams confirmed everything was safe. Procedures had to be followed, even after the danger had passed. Eventually, the signal came. It was safe to open the doors. Passengers began preparing to leave, slowly at first, unbuckling seatbelts, standing up, reaching for bags, the usual routine. But something felt different now, quieter, more aware. People moved, but with a kind of shared understanding that something important had just happened, even if they didn't fully understand it. As the line formed in the aisle, the whispers grew clearer. A few people had started putting the pieces together. There was a problem with the landing. I heard the captain ask for help. Someone went to the cockpit. Someone from the back. The words moved from person to person, changing slightly each time, but the meaning stayed close enough. Eyes began to turn, searching, trying to find who it was. The woman didn't react. She stayed seated until her row cleared. She helped her daughter stand, adjusted her jacket, checked her son's bag. Small, normal actions, the kind that don't draw attention. When it was their turn, they stepped into the aisle. No one stopped her. No one pointed. But a few people looked a little longer than before, trying to be sure, trying to connect what they had heard with what they were seeing. A quiet woman, 2 kids, nothing special. And yet, something didn't match. They moved forward with the line, step by step, out of the aircraft, down the stairs, onto the runway. The air outside felt cooler, fresh, different from the recycled air inside the plane. Emergency vehicles stood nearby, lights still flashing, but the urgency had faded. Everything was under control now. Passengers walked together toward the terminal, guided by airport staff. Some talked quietly. Some stayed silent. Some kept looking back at the aircraft, as if trying to understand what had just happened. The woman walked with her children beside her. Her daughter held her hand tightly now. Her son walked close, his book tucked under his arm. Neither of them spoke for a while. They didn't need to. The moment was still settling. Inside the terminal, things returned to normal faster than expected. That's how places like airports work. No matter what happens, movement continues. Flights arrive. Flights depart. People come and go. Life doesn't stop. The passengers from the flight gathered near the baggage area, waiting, watching the carousel. talking quietly. Now the story was spreading more clearly. Someone had heard from someone near the front. Someone had spoken to a crew member. Details began to line up. A woman from row 21, former pilot, helped the captain, helped stop the plane. The woman stood with her children near the side, away from the center. She didn't move closer, didn't correct anyone, didn't confirm anything. She just waited. Her daughter leaned against her. Her son looked around, listening to the voices. Then he looked back at her. There was something different in his eyes now. Not confusion, not fear. Something closer to understanding. He didn't say anything, but he stayed close. After a few minutes, a man approached them. He looked unsure, like he wasn't certain if he should say anything. He stopped a few steps away, then spoke. "Were you the one who helped?" His voice was quiet, respectful. The woman looked at him. For a second, she seemed like she might say no, or avoid the question. But instead, she gave a small nod. "I was up there," she said. Nothing more. The man nodded slowly. He didn't ask anything else. He just said, "Thank you." Then he stepped back. That was enough. The woman didn't respond with anything more than a small smile, because there was nothing else to add. She hadn't done it for thanks. She hadn't done it to be seen. She had done it because it needed to be done, and now it was over. The moment had passed. Life was moving again. The carousel started turning. Bags began to appear. People stepped forward, collecting their belongings, returning to their routines, returning to their lives. And the woman in the green jacket, standing quietly with her 2 children, became just another traveler again, at least on the outside. But something had changed, not in her. She had already been who she was, but in the way others saw, or tried to see, because now some of them understood something they hadn't before, that sometimes the person you don't notice at all is the one who matters most when everything is on the line. By the time they reached home that evening, the day already felt far away, not forgotten, but softened, like something that had happened in another life. The apartment was quiet when they walked in. The familiar smell of home, the small things in their usual places, the simple comfort being back. It all settled around them slowly. Her daughter dropped her small bag near the door and walked straight to the couch. She didn't say anything. She just curled up, still holding that same need to stay close, even if she didn't fully understand why. Her son placed his book on the table, then stood still for a moment, looking around, taking it in, making sure everything was normal again. The woman closed the door behind them and stood there for a second longer than usual. Just 1 second. Her hand still on the handle. Her eyes closed briefly. A quiet pause. Then she moved. "Shoes off," she said gently. Her voice sounded the same as always. Normal, steady, routine. They did as told, because routines matter, especially after a day that didn't follow any. She walked into the kitchen and started filling a pot with water. No hesitation, no discussion, just action. Dinner needed to be made. That was the next thing. That was how life worked now. One thing after another. Her daughter didn't last long on the couch. Within minutes, her eyes closed, the way of the day finally catching up. The woman noticed. Of course she did. She dried her hands, walked over, and lifted her gently. Her daughter rested her head on her shoulder without waking. She was heavier now than she used to be. That thought came quietly. It came every time she carried her. A small reminder. Time doesn't slow down. She carried her to the bedroom and tucked her in carefully, pulled the blanket up, brushed a strand of hair away from her face, then stood there for a moment, just looking, making sure she was okay. Really okay. Then she turned off the light and walked out, back to the kitchen, back to the next thing. Her son was sitting at the table now, his book open again. But he wasn't reading. Not really. His eyes moved across the page, but his mind was somewhere else. She could tell. She always could. She returned to the stove and stirred the pot slowly. The sound of water heating filled the room. Quiet, simple, normal. After a few minutes, he spoke. "Mom." She didn't turn right away. "Yeah, what you did today." He stopped, not because he didn't know what to say, but Because he was trying to say it right. She turned slightly, looking at him now. He met her eyes. That was from before, right? She understood the question, not just the words, the meaning behind them. Yes, she said, when I used to fly. He nodded slowly, processing, connecting things. You were really good at it, he said. It wasn't a question. It wasn't even surprise. It was a statement. Simple, honest. She looked back at the stove for a moment, then stirred again. I did my job, she said. He didn't look away. That's not just a job. There was no challenge in his voice, no pressure, just truth, the kind that comes from seeing something clearly. She smiled slightly. Not big, just enough. You think too much, she said softly. He shrugged a little. Maybe. There was a pause. The water began to boil. She added the pasta, watching it settle. Then he spoke again. Are you glad you know how to do that? She stopped stirring for a moment, just for a moment. Then she thought about it. Not quickly, not automatically. Honestly. Yes, she said. Today, yes. He nodded, that same nod again, the one that didn't need more words. They ate dinner at the small table in the kitchen, just the two of them, her daughter still asleep in the other room. The conversation moved to other things. School, homework, a project due next week, normal topics, normal life. But underneath it, something had shifted, not in a loud way, not in a way that needed to be explained, just quietly, a deeper understanding. After dinner, she washed the dishes. Her son dried them without being asked. They worked side by side. No rush, no noise, just the soft sound of water and plates. When everything was done, he went to his room. Good night, he said. Good night, she replied. She watched him go, then stood alone in the kitchen. The lights were still on. The window showed the city outside, calm and steady. She rested her hands on the edge of the sink, and for the first time that day, she let herself think about it fully. Not the moment in the cockpit, not the instructions, not the technique, but the distance, how close it had been, how small the margin was. She took a slow breath, then another, not shaking, not overwhelmed, just aware. She turned off the kitchen light and walked to her room. On the small table beside her bed was a notebook. She picked it up, sat down, opened it. She didn't write every day, only when something mattered. She held the pen for a second, then began. Her words were simple, just like her voice, just like her life now. Today I helped land a plane. She paused, looked at the words, then continued. I wasn't flying. I just told someone what to do. Another pause. Then, it worked. She kept writing slowly. Everyone was okay. My kids were there. She stopped again. Her eyes rested on the page. Then she wrote one more line. I thought I left that part of my life behind. She sat still for a moment, then added, I didn't. She closed the notebook gently, set it back on the table, and turned off the light. The room went quiet, the kind of quiet that feels complete. Days passed. Life returned to its normal rhythm. School mornings, lunch packing, homework, evenings. Nothing changed on the outside. She went back to teaching, standing in front of classroom, explaining simple ideas, helping students understand things step by step. Her voice steady, her patience clear. The students didn't know, not at first. To them, she was just their teacher, the one who explained things in a way that made sense, the one who listened, the one who didn't rush them. But stories have a way of moving, even when no one tells them directly. It started small. A parent mentioning something, a conversation overheard, a detail pass along. Within days, the students began to ask, at first quietly, then more openly, did you really help land a plane? Were you a pilot? What happened? She answered simply, yes, a little. It was nothing dramatic. And then she moved on, back to the lesson, because that was what mattered now. Teaching, being there, living the life she had chosen. One afternoon, after class, one student stayed behind. Quiet, careful. Can I ask something? She said. Of course. Why did you stop flying? The question stayed in the room for a moment. The woman looked at her, then answered honestly, My family needed me more. The student nodded slowly, thinking, Do you miss it? Another pause. Then, Every day, she said. And not at all. The student looked confused. That doesn't make sense. The woman smiled slightly. It does, she said. The student nodded again, even if she didn't fully understand. Some things take time. That evening, back at home, everything felt normal again. Dinner, conversation, quiet. The woman stood in the kitchen once more, looking out at the night, her children safe, her life steady, and somewhere inside her, both things existed at the same time, the life she had lived and the life she had chosen. She didn't need to choose between them anymore, because now she understood something clearly. You don't lose the parts of yourself that matter. You don't leave them behind. You carry them, quietly, until the moment comes when they are needed again. And when that moment comes, you simply stand up and do what you already know how to do.